guys, let's read a book together. I haven't read books since Ted's holiday because we're so busy going out and hanging out with my family. But now I got some peace at my home. So I'm gonna continue the chapter in this book. We're gonna read chapter 11 in Wave Me Goodbye. Yeah, chapter 11. And we nearly finished it. Well, at least we just finished half of the book. And we got plenty more chapters to read. And this chapter, if you remembered, in chapter 10, Shirley, she ate a really delicious pie. And turned out that was rabbit pie. And she was shocked and sick at the same time and called Chubby a murderer. And she just threw up right on the dining table. So let's see in chapter 11 how it went and what happened. Will they go anywhere? Let's find out. Before, I have to drink some warm water to keep my throat. You see, I wear 2 shirts. It's so cold nowadays. All right. Chapter 11. Chubby whisked me out of the dining room so fast that I stumbled and nearly fell flat. She jerked me upright and dragged me down the corridor and into the toilet. I was sick. Again, several times. What a waste of my lovely pie, she lamented. I can't help it. Stop talking and concentrate on the job in hand, Chubby said sternly. When I stopped heaving at last, she fetched an old rag, mopped my face and the bodies of my skirt, then fetched me a glass of water. Don't drink it, just swill your mouth out, she said. I ought to scrub it out with a stick of soap. Fancy calling me a murderer. Well, you are, shooting a poor little rabbit. How could you? I said tearfully. You're living off the land, as nature intended. What else are we going to put in our pies? You could have steak pies or mutton pies, I murmured. Oh yeah, where do you get steak and mutton from then, Miss Cleverdick? Do you go and pick a big juicy steak off a bush and pluck a side of mutton from the vegetable patch? No, you kill a blooming great cow or a sheep. That's how you get meat, you silly little townie. I know, I'm not stupid, but rabbits are different. They're little and fluffy, and you have them as pets, I said, blowing my nose as best as I could on prickly as out toilet paper. So it's right to eat an animal if it's an ugly old cow or a daft-looking sheep, but wrong to eat a cuddly woodly, pretty bunny, Chubby asked scornfully. Yeah, because cattle and sheep lives on farms, I said, realizing this was an inadequate answer. They don't get shot anyway. That must be a horrible way to die. They get to die peacefully. I don't think any animal being herded into a slaughterhouse would agree with you, said Chubby. Now come on upstairs, quick. I've got to go and clear up that nasty mess you made in the dining room. You'll better have a lie down until you feel better. What exactly is a slaughterhouse? I asked fearfully. It's where they slit all the animals' throat, said Chubby. I shuddered, imagining brutal men and wild-eyed, screaming animals. I didn't realize they did that. I thought the animal just got old and died in their sleep, I said, and that made it all right to eat them. That's what my mom said. Then your mom must have been giving you some very tough plates of meat, said Chubby. Townies, they talk a load of nonsense. She pulled me upstairs and along to my room. Lie down now. I haven't got anything to lie on, I said. Well, that's true enough. Chubby hesitated. Come with me. She took me along to the end of the corridor and opened the door. You can have a lie down here, on my bed, just so as long as you don't wet it like little Archie. I never wet the bed. I'm 10, I said indignantly. Well, start acting like it. Now lie down on top of the bed and have a little nap. Don't blame me if you're starving hungry when you wake up. "There won't be no more tea till tea time," said Chubby, and hurried out of the room. Chubby's bed wasn't much more comfortable than the floor. It was very narrow, with a thin mattress, and her pillow was hard. Her blankets were old and faded. I understood why she was so upset about her pretty eiderdown. I hope Archie had made too much of a stain. My stomach gurgled. I tried rubbing it, but that didn't seem to help. I hope I wouldn't be sick again. My mouth still tasted horrid, and although Chubby had wiped my bodice with a damp cloth, I worried that it might smell. Chubby had warned me about being starving hungry, but I decided I didn't want to eat anything ever again. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't get to sleep. The rabbit squirming in my stomach, though I kept going back to distract myself. I got up and wandered round the room. It was nowhere near nice as Mrs. Waverly's. Chubby just had an old rug on the bare floorboards, a rickety chair, a rail of clothes behind a curtain, a washstand with a chipped jug and basin, and a small chest of drawers with a mirror propped on top as a makeshift dressing table. I peered in the mirror. I was an unattractive pea green. I pulled a face at myself, and the mirror face grimaced back at me. I looked back at the door, listening hard. Silence. No flop of slippers. I dared to edge the top drawers open. I hoped for a powder and makeup, but I only found a paintbrush and a comb and a little tube of salve for chapped lips. There was a neatly ironed pile of handkerchief, a pair of rolled-up stockings, and an old chocolate box. I peeped inside. It served as a jewelry box, but it only held a watch with a broken strap, an old-fashioned jet necklace, and a small string of pearls. The second drawer contained a neat pile of hand-knitted jersey, a chiffon scarf, a pair of knickers, and a suspender belt. I tried the last drawer, having to go down on my knees to get it open. This was much more interesting. It had things from Chubby's childhood, a finger-sized doll dressed as a fairy, and a red storybook called The Odd Little Girl. I looked inside and found a label stuck on the first page. Editor to Maureen Alice Chubb for regular attendance at St. John's Sunday School, Meadowridge. Perhaps she was still Pisces now, because she also had a Bible. I flicked through the flimsy pages. Every now and then, I came across a dried flower, a rose or a few sprigs of lavender, pressed as thin as the paper. Then 2/3 of the way through, between the testaments, there was a photograph. I saw a young couple on a village green, slightly blurred because they were dancing. The man was much taller than the girl, and clearly stronger too, because he was rolling her around so that her feet barely skimmed the grass. He wore a white shirt and white trousers. Perhaps he had been playing in a cricket match. The girl wore white too, with a flower in her hair. He was laughing, so handsome in the sunlight. She was looking coyly away from him, but she was smiling. There was something familiar about her sharp little face and her bright eyes. It was Chubby. So who was the man? One of her brothers? No, he had to be her sweetheart. It was so strange to see fierce little Chubby in the arms of this handsome young man, looking so happy. So where was he now? She was Miss Chubb. Had he gone off with someone else or been killed in a war? I heard a faint flip-flop beyond the door. I stuffed the photo inside the Bible again, shoved it back in the bottom drawer, and leaped onto the bed, actually. Chubby came in. "Did you have a little nap?" she demanded. "Well, not really," I said. "How are you feeling now?" I giggled. "Not sure." Do you feel dicky? Mrs. Matt had gone into her head to take the car and drive you down to the village. It's a daft idea, if you ask me. She needs to keep that tank of petrol for her emergencies, especially as I assume we'll be at war any day now. It's only a 15-minute walk, for God's sake, but Mrs. Matt will insist on wearing flimsy shoes. She's lucky to turn her ankle if she attempts it, but if you throw up in her car, I'm the poor muggins who will have to clear it up, just because she treats me like a skivvy doesn't mean I find it any easier doing the messy, smelly jobs. I'm human, just the same as she is, more so in fact. Chubby chided on while my head reeled. I watched her thin face flush pink as she became indignant. It looked as if she were wearing rouge. I pictured her with thin mouth, into a pale eyelashes, and red lipstick, turning her thin mouth into a cupid bow. I curled her limp hair and puffed it out. I took off her bobble jersey and tired skirt and ancient slippers, and gave her a white dress and nylons and suited heels. Yes, it was definitely Chubby with the man in the photograph, but many years ago. Chubby, do you have a sweetheart? I asked before I could stop myself. She stared at me. What's this nonsense? A sweetheart? What chance have I got to get a sweetheart? Stuck here working all out for Mrs. Mad. I felt ashamed at my tackleness. Yeah, but maybe when you were younger? Chubby pinched her nose with 2 fingers and waggled it at me. So tell me not to be so nosy, but her eyes sparkled. I was quite popular in my day, even though I said so myself. She said that she snapped back to the present. Right, you get. Is that bodice okay? Oh, and look, you've torn it. You have to put your jersey on for decency, even though it's a scorcher. What are you doing in the village? It's a surprise. And it's a surprise for me, too. I don't mind telling you. Mrs. Matt doesn't often go on little jaunts, said Chubby. I thought carefully about it as I went to the room where I left my clothes and belongings. A surprise that sounded as it might be a treat. Where would we going for a treat in the afternoon? If I'll be very good, Mom would sometimes take me for an ice bun in Peggy's tea rooms. Oh, I hope Mrs. Waverly might be taking us for tea. My tummy was still churning, but I was sure Bun would slip down easily. I felt I had to smarten myself up. My skirt bodice still smelled a bit, and I couldn't bear the prospect of putting my fair owl jumper on top. I started itching at the very thought. Going out to tea with a grand lady was sure suchly a special occasion that I ought to wear my best frock. I took the skirt off and shook out my special dress. It was rather creased, but it couldn't be helped. It was still a silvery treat sliding it over my head and shoulders, pushing my hands through each puff sleeve, smoothing it down and twirling around so that the skirt flared out. I wish I had a mirror. I did a posy dance around the room, pointing my toes in painful red shoes, and then sweeping a graceful curtsy to myself. Shirley, are you coming or not? Miss Waverly getting the car out of the garage, Chubby called. I pulled my postcard home out of my gas mask case. I didn't have any pocket in my party dress. No pocket at all. But I folded it carefully in half and slid up one of my tight puff sleeves. Then I rushed out of the room, sliding along the landing in my patent shoes, and clattered my toes and heels. What a noise! You're like a herd of elephants, said Chubby. She was still wearing her penny and slippers. Aren't you coming too? I asked her. She tossed her head. Some poor fool's got to stay at home and get on with the work, she said. It seemed desperately unfair. If you were a servant, you got left out of everything nice. I thought of Mrs. Waverly's beautiful bedroom and Chubby's sparse one. It had been kind of her to let me lie on her bed, especially after I called her a murderer. I felt myself blushing. Chubby, I'm very sorry I called you a murderer, I said earnestly. I still think it's wicked to kill a rabbit and eat them, but I expect you were following orders. Chubby looked amused rather than touched. Oh well, I've been called worse, she said. Worse than murderer. Oh yes, said Chubby, as if I care. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. I wish I didn't let words hurt me, I said. I hated it when Marilyn Henderson called me a posh knob. I hated it when those straight Agatha's girl whispered nasty things about me too. Oh, I dare say you're tough enough in times. Off you pop now. On the front door, Mrs. Mac will be waiting and hang on tight. She's not that great a driver. Mrs. Waverly looked surprisingly small, hunched up behind the wheel of a very big black car. Kevin and Archie were bouncing around in the back ecstatically. It's a Bentley! An actual Bentley! We're going for a ride in a Bentley, Kevin gabbled. It's like we're rich folk, Archie crowded. I wish Auntie could see me now. He was dressed in his own wash shirt and short trousers, though they still looked damp. Someone has put a folded towel underneath him, so he wouldn't stain the cream leather seat. I looked in the back with the boys. I looked at the empty seat beside Mrs. Waverly. Could I possibly sit beside you, Mrs. Waverly? I asked politely. She looked amused and opened the front passenger door for me. That's not fair. She wouldn't let us sit in the front. You're not wearing a pretty frock, said Mrs. Waverly, helping me in. Well, hers won't be pretty much longer, not when she's sick all down it, Kevin muttered. You're gonna be sick again, are you, Shirley? Mrs. Waverly asked. No, I'm not, I said triumphantly. I felt triumphant sitting in the front, but the feeling didn't last long. Mrs. Waverly was true to her name. She wavered first to one side, then the other as she drove us down a long, steep, winding driveway. First, it seemed like she crashed directly into a tree, that she would topple us right over the edge. I clung to the slippery leather seat and pressed my lips together to stop screaming. The boys weren't so restrained and whooped loudly as they slid about in the back. Pipe down, gentlemen, Mrs. Waverly muttered through gritted teeth. She peered ahead intently, her knuckles white because she was gripping the steering wheel so hard. I had never, ever ridden a car before, but I knew Chubby was right. Mrs. Waverly was a terrible driver. Turning out of the driveway onto the road at the bottom of the hill was a nightmare. Mrs. Waverly waited and waited, though the road was absolutely clear in both directions, and then ignored an approaching cyclist altogether, and made a sudden bolt for it. He wobbled in fright and yelled at her, but she took no notice whatsoever, and drove fast into the village. It was a huge relief when she parked the car, though it was a great foot away from the curb. Across the road, I saw a tea shop called the Eagle Nook. It looked very promising, with pretty curtains tied with ribbons and criminalite lady ornaments on the sill. I ran over and peered in through the windows. I could see plates of cakes by the counter, a Victoria sponge, fruit tarts, and little rock cakes. I couldn't spot any ice bun, but a slice of sponge could be just as nice, especially if it had masses of jam and cream. Surely come along, dear. We haven't had time to peer in all the windows, Mrs. Waverly called. Aren't we gonna to go in the Eagle Nook or gonna somewhere for tea? No, of course not. We're here to do some shopping, she said briskly. I felt tremendously disappointed but trudged back over the road obediently. I wondered if there might be a bookshop in the village. We went into a tobacconist and sweet shop, and I saw a dusty shelf of books behind the counter with a sign saying, penny leading library. I got excited, but I could see that the book were all silly romances, not at all the sort of my story I want to read. My goodness, said the lady behind the counter. It's Mrs. Waverly, isn't it? We don't often see you down in the village, and you brought some kitties from London too. The boys were eyeing up the sweets in the jar hopefully, squabbling over which were best, toffee, humbugs, or licorice. I'll eat them all, said Archie. Can I have some, miss? He asked, tugging at Mrs. Waverly's trousers leg. Please, may I? She corrected. Archie misunderstood. Yes, you can have lots and lots so as long as I can too, he said. The sweet shop lady chuckled. Bless him. Doesn't he speak funny? What happened to his hair? Ain't got none now. Archie rubbed the top of his shiny head. It hurts, he wailed. Poor little mite, said the sweet shop lady. Would you like a sugar mouse? A sugar moose, he said. Can't he, madam? Awful, artful little mite, said Mrs. Waverly. Very well, he can have the moose, said thank you, Archie, and you may weigh out 4 ounces of boiled sweets for the children to share. Kevin and I exchanged looks. It wasn't fair. We'll have like a sugar mousse too. Boiled sweets were pretty boring, though better than nothing. When we got outside the shop, we were allowed to have one each. I chose green lamb flavored, while Karen had strawberry red. 2 minutes later, we crunched them up while Archie was still sucking away at his sugar mousse. He was soon sticky all around his mouth and halfway up his arm. Next, we came to a chemist. Mrs. Waverly went in, but told us to wait outside. Jammy little devil, Kevin said to Archie. Archie nodded happily, slurping away. Down the road, I saw a red post box. I darted up and posted my card. What were you doing? Kevin asked. Sending a postcard to my mom. I said, aren't you going to send one to yours? What for? To tell her about your billet. I lowered my voice. You know, that's a bit weird. She won't care it one way or the other, said Kevin. She's not my real mom, so send one to her. I said, haven't got a clue where she is. I was shocked that I didn't know what to say. Both Kevin and Archie seem to come from strange families. We're moms, and that disappeared as easily as Hanky. I sent a card to my new auntie, but I can't write yet, said Archie. I can print my name, though sometimes it comes out backwards. You're the one who's backwards, said Kevin, gruffly, giving him a little shove. You get to be Chubby's favorite because you're little, and you get to be Lady Muck's favorite because you're a girl and suck up to her, he added, nodding at me. I knew this was true. I felt myself going red. I'm not her favorite, I said even so. Yes, you are. When you chucked up all over the table, I thought she'll go mental, but she just said, poor Shirley, she's very sensitive. Does she really? I liked the idea of being sensitive. It made me sound interesting and intelligent and special. I looked at the lovely big purple and red and green bottles, glinting in the sunshine in the chemist's window. I saw 3 colored Shirleys staring back, Ian small and shyly smiling, and extra sensitive. Stop grinning at yourself like a nutcase, said Kevin. What's she spying in there? She's been an age. It'll be special lady stuff. I said, what's that? I wasn't sure. Mom always said she was leading lady stuff when she went into Boots. Oh, you'll find out soon enough, I said, because that was Mom said to me when I asked her. It turned out Mrs. Waverly wasn't buying anything special or mysterious. It was 3 tins of Gibbs deep fresh and a large bar of pure soap. She even bought 3 toothbrushes, 3 flannels, and 3 small hairbrushes. She presented them to us as if they were the best Christmas toys in the world. Well, you could at least say thank you, she said, upset by our lack of response. Thank you very much, Mrs. Waverly, but actually I've got my own toothbrush and flannel and hairbrush, I said. I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I was insulted on Mom's behalf. She would have died if she knew that Mrs. Waverly thought her the sort of mother who didn't provide her child with washing things. My dad doesn't hold with toothbrushes. He said they just spread the germs and rot your teeth. And he's got a fine set of choppers. Hardly any missing, said Kevin stiffly. I like them little brushes on clothes, said Archie. I want them. Yeah, well, a hairbrush is wasted on you, matey, said Kevin. Mrs. Waverly frowned. Don't be unkind, Kevin. I don't want Archie to feel you left out, she said. Walk along. We haven't finished yet. She shepherded us along the street towards a large shop at the end of the road. A group of village women stood there gossiping. They all stared at Mrs. Waverly, and when I looked back, they were all in a huddle, heads together, clearly talking about her. I felt a pang. It was exactly the way the other girls at Paradise Road treated me. I peered up at Mrs. Waverly, wondering if she minded, even though I've got my own brushes and flannel. It will be lovely to have new ones, I said to her, and I love the smell of pure soap. It's very kind of you to get them for us when you didn't even want it in the first place. That Mrs. Henshaw tricked you into it, didn't she? She smiled at me uncertainly. It looked as if Mrs. Henshaw had been very persuasive, she said, because many of the village women had children with them, though some were clearly their own, rosy-cheeked and sturdy. The evacuees looked as if they came from a different planet. They were nearly all small and skinny and pale by comparison, with dark skull under their eyes, except for Marilyn Henderson. I was at the sight of her. She had managed her own hair care because her ringlets were glossier and more gorgeous than ever. She was wearing a pink summer frock with a white Agora bolero. With a white and a bolero. Mare looked very mingy and sour beside her, in grubby white Aztecs blouse and a skirt with an uneven hem. Their foster mother was smiling at Marilyn doubtingly. Mary didn't get a look in. Look, it's Marilyn and Mary, said Kevin, as if he hadn't seen them for months. He waved to them, but they ignored him. Stuck up noses, he muttered. Yes, they are. Then we saw Kathleen and Vera. They were rushing out of the chemist and then leaning panting against the wall further up the road. Kathleen was looking furtive, showing Vera something with her hand cupped. Then she fiddled with it, very quickly outlined her mouth. It's lipstick, I hissed. I bet she nicked it, Kevin whispered. Fancy nicking a silly old lipstick. Archie gobbled the remaining hunch of his sugar mousse and seized one of the blue hairbrushes out of the chemist's big paper bag. He stood up, brushing his bald head. Don't, Archie. You hurt yourself, I said. I'm just brushing my hair like a good boy, he said. Don't be silly, I said. When I peered closely, I saw a few prickles. Hey, you're right. It's starting to grow. I know I can feel it. Goody, goody. I hate being a baldy bonce, said Archie. He missed how long it would take for my hair to grow back proper. He clutched Mrs. Waverly by the church leg again. His hand was appalling sticky, and she winced. I don't expect it would take very long, she said, dabbing at her trousers with a hanky. She spat it in a ladylike way, and then did her best to wipe Archie's hand and face. He giggled and squirmed as if she was attacking him. Hold still, silly Billy, she said, trying to hang on to him by the collar. I'm Archie, he insisted, and stop scrubbing at me. Chubby's already given me a good going over. I should think so too, but we need you to be clean. We're going to buy you some new clothes, Mrs. Waverly said. That's not fair, said Kevin. He mucks up his own clothes, and he doesn't get a hiding. He simply gets a new lot. You're going to get a new clothes, too, said Miss Waverly, and she steered us along the road. That's it. In the next chapter, chapter 12, maybe they're going to get some new clothes and see if they went well together. What clothes are Archie and Shirley and Kevin are going to get? We don't know yet, but we'll find out in the next chapter, chapter 12. Right now, I gotta go with my mom and dad to somewhere else. So, bye. See you next time. Bye.